Hello, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity to talk about climate change. If you don't mind, I'll share my presentation. But first, I'd like to ask people to raise their hand if they think that renewables have substantially or at all decreased our consumption of fossil fuels. I'll let Sharon count the hands, and now I'll share my screen and go to the presentation. Okay, so can you all see this presentation?
We can, Liza.
Good, okay. So climate action and extreme weather events, how do we change course? That's the topic for today. I can figure out how to change my, okay. So maybe some of you are surprised, maybe some of you aren't, but global fossil fuel use is still increasing inexorably. The fact that we've had wind and solar and hydro for a long time now has not made enough of a dent in these graphs of coal, oil, and gas consumption. And what does this mean? This means that the global land, can you see the top part? I've got something covered in my top part there. Can you see it all? Yeah. This means that the global land and average temperature anomaly, which means the difference between the average and what it is now, has gone up. It's been going up for 100 years at least. If you go back to 1920 or so, you can see we're going up. And it's been going up very rapidly since around 1975. And what does that mean? Well, that in turn, not quite working the way I want it to. Sorry, I don't know what's going wrong. It's, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let's try again. Here we are. Okay. So as a result of these increases in temperature, we have had increases in natural disasters. And this is a graph that shows the natural disasters by type. And you can see that they've been going up without pause. And this will indicate to you the extent, the cost of the natural disasters, the severity as represented by cost. You have the timeline at the bottom, 1980 to 2024, and the cost in billions with a B on the y-axis. And you can see in the last two data periods, the cost has been on the order of 500 billion with a B per year. The World Meteorological Organization gives a report of the state of the climate for the COP, the Conference of the Parties, and the global mean temperature for the first half of last year was very close to the 1.5 degree C limit, which we had all agreed, the whole world had agreed to try to keep under 11 years ago, the 2015 Paris Conference Agreement. So the concentration of greenhouse gases in the ocean heat is continuing to rise, and the Arctic sea ice extent is continuing to decrease. And in case you doubt that fossil fuels are the largest contributors to climate change, it's right here on the United Nations page. I know we're anti-science, but you can take this to the bank that fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, are by far the largest contributor to global climate change. They account for about 68% of global greenhouse gas emissions and nearly 90% of CO2 emissions. So it's not that we're failing to talk about climate change. We are talking about it. What we're failing to do is to rebuild the infrastructure that replaces fossil fuels at scale. Extreme events, I got to get rid of this thing on the tab. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. I'm having tech problems, guys. Sorry. Extreme events are not just warnings, they're wake-up calls that we're failing. We've mobilized narratives, we've mobilized targets. We've not yet mobilized fossil fuel replacement at industrial scale. And if decarbonization does not mean physically displacing fossil fuels in the energy system reliably and under stress, then we're not doing the one thing that matters. So what do we have to do? We know that extreme heat increases electricity demand. We know that storm stress transmission and drought reduces hydropower. And we also know that gaps in supply result in fossil fuel reliance. We have to go back to fossil fuels to keep the lights on at night when you're relying on solar, or when there's no wind, if you're relying on wind. And addressing these realities is uncomfortable. Are our preferred decarbonization pathways structurally capable of replacing fossil fuels, or are they politically easier but physically insufficient? So if we avoid difficult infrastructure conversations because they're politically sensitive, the crisis will force those conversations later under worse or impossible conditions. So the choice really isn't between controversy and harmony, but between planned transition and forced reaction. And I hope we can use this hour to identify where realism has been missing. So the question is, how are we going to transition out of fossil fuels? And we need to solve this here and now so that there can be a there and then. Thank you for listening.